Hey Skyfarers, and welcome to Aethercast, the Kharadron Overlords channel and podcast. Today on the show, we are interviewing one of the founding members of the Kharadron Overlords Geldrar, Mr. Tom Lyons. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Hello, friends.
I wonder if you do your catchphrase.
Of course, of course.
And you spoiled things for me recently, Tom, because I was going to make some sort of joke about how you haven't been on Warhammer Weekly for ages, and then we managed to snag you into the Vince, but then you went back on.
Yeah. You know, it felt like the right time because then I could spruik Aethercast. You know, I could. It just felt like it was the right time to make things happen.
Yeah, I can't really complain if you're giving us a boost on the show. So but it ruined my joke. But I don't know. I was struggling to think of a good one anyway.
Saves us some time.
Yeah, and of course, helping me interview Tom tonight, it's my ever faithful avatar of Gromvindor, Duard Max Bowman.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be back.
Good to have you. And we will be without Kron tonight because time zones are rubbish. And it's like half 4 in the morning for him. But we might have Matt join us in a little while.
Yeah. He's pruning some trees, but he'll be here maybe later.
Yeah, he's out tending the Garden of Nurgle.
Exactly.
Okay, so normally at this point in the show, Tom, I would get people to explain who they are. Because in case people don't know who they are, but I'd imagine people know who you are. So
I'm Tom Lyons. I've been in AOS since back before it was AOS. I was playing fantasy. I actually joined into Warhammer Fantasy like right as the end time started, so it was a great time to get into the game that's dying. But we shortly after that. Vince and I, one of my dear friends from childhood, said, "Hey, I've been watching the show Warhammer Weekly. It stopped, and they're okay with me continuing it on. Do you want to do it? You know, as kind of the new player?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that'd be great." And that was 6 years ago, and so now here we are. We've been through all the ups and downs of AOS, and it's been a joy. It's been a joy. So our show is Warhammer Weekly for those that don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody knows what it is.
If you don't know, what are you even doing?
Although I've already learned something new because I just assumed that you guys started Warhammer Weekly. I didn't know you continued it on from something else.
We did. There was a pretty lively YouTube community, and when Vince got back in, I got back in painting. Because we were playing Mordheim, and he had some local friends that got back into Warhammer tabletop, but he didn't have a lot of people, and so he was watching a lot of content producers online for Warhammer Fantasy, and they really inspired him. And for Vince, he wanted to continue that. So, and we were very fortunate to be able to get in AOS, and we were one of the only channels, one of the only content producers that actually continued on into AOS from Warhammer Fantasy, and so we got to be a part of things from the beginning.
Cool. Well, I mean, it's been for everyone else's benefit as well, because
Absolutely.
A weekly show to tune into is always fun. So
we try
weekly plus specials for releases and stuff.
Yes, much to the chagrin of my wife.
Yes. Okay, and you've also been a long-time Kharadron Overlords player. Got in right at the beginning.
I did. It's funny. I did. For those that are longtime watchers of the show, they'll remember we did a year of budget armies, because when all the fantasy stuff was on sale because everybody was liquidating, a bunch of us did a slow grow league, and I decided to do dwarves, Duarden. And so I had a bunch of dispossessed, and I bought a bunch for $200. I bought the equivalent of 5,000 points of dwarves. It was amazing. But I kept I kept wanting to have more. I wanted the sky ships that were on all the art, and I kept beating that drum. And then KO dropped, and I was like, "Oh, this isn't exactly what I was wanting." There's no hair and no beards, and then that's when I was a big fan of the old Dogs of War army, and so then the muse hit. It hit me, and I went, "Oh, I'll do an updated version of Long Drawn Slayers," which were these pirate slayers. with KO, and that's how the idea came about to do, you know, kind of the distinctive Fire Slayer KO merging. And now, like, it's actually a thing, you know, where like you can do it feasibly in Barak Thryng.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. And it's well, you've done an amazing job on the army as well. I mean, you can go. We've got one of the pictures on screen here, but if you want to see more, you can go check them out on TGA, the Grand Alliance forums. We've got a series of posts on there with, you know, all the pictures and stuff, all the cool conversions in your display board and stuff.
Yeah, I was about to add, it's not just the army; it's the display board as well. That's awesome.
Yeah, I originally made that display board. Vince and I did for a Teams event, one of our Havoc events. And what that means is that I bought and built almost all of it, or basically all of it, and then painted a bunch, and then went, Vince, you need to do some work, man. And so the both of us kind of went together, and I went up for a couple weekends, and we worked on it and stuff like that. And it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, and so it's been this kind of distinctive army that I've gotten to play, and I've played it as Fire Slayer, or I've played it as pure KO. I've mixed in and done a generic order. Functionally, it was Cities of Sigmar before there was Cities of Sigmar. I ran it as that, Tempestside, and later, and then I ran just a pure Fire Slayers with KO allies, and then now I'm back to pure KO again. So
yeah, I remember actually talking about on this show probably years ago now about you playing Cities of Tempestside, you know, mixing in, I think, big units of Arcanauts and stuff, and big units of Longbeards, probably.
Yeah, it was great. I loved it. It was funny. Like the year I took that to Adepticon, I took 6th. I think that year. That sounds right. With a mixed order, like it was before cities even existed. It was just a mixed order army with just very efficient units. Is basically all it was. And of KO, of Dispossessed, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it. It's funny. I was here through all the ups and downs of the fire. So when I bought this army, like I went all in. I had like 10 boxes of Thunderers. I had like, you know, I had 90 Arco, had all the ships, all the heroes. I went in with everything, started building, painting. And I remember getting my first unit of 10 Thunderers done. They were 10 cannon Thunderers back when you could do that. And then literally one day later, the GHB leaks with the new Thunderer War Scroll where you could only do 1 cannon per 5. And I was very upset.
I'm not surprised.
Holding a grudge like only a true Duerden can do.
Yeah. I got away with that a little bit because I bought the bits but not put them together yet. So those bits I bought just become skyhooks. And of course, eventually they got wasted as well.
Yes. Yep.
You can't have nice.
Yeah, I did the skyhook thing because I did all of my skyhooks were converted as well. I used the Iron Drake cannons.
Yeah, that's what I had. They were going to be Aether cannons, and then they had skypike tits in the ends to be skyhooks. But
Yep.
Got some use out of them at least.
Definitely, yeah. So like I love the army. At the end of the day. It's been a go-to for me, and I've loved expanding on. Like I wish I would have, if I was thinking, I would have gotten a picture. Like I have a huge shelf of just all my Duerden, and like I probably have 200 to 300 models painted now between my KO and my Fire Slayers and everything. And I still have a lot more. Like I don't know if you can see. Like here's my new gun hauler that I'm working on.
Oh, that's nice.
Well, that's a tall gun holder.
Yeah, and it is not regulation height. Yeah, it's not regulation height
and everything.
Oh, come on now. So I actually pay attention to like what standard line of like height is, so that I can measure from those spots and determine line of sight. Because obviously, like I'm not going to use this for full line of sight.
Yeah.
And then the other one that I'm working on that I haven't revealed anywhere, but I'll reveal on this show.
An exclusive.
It's broken.
It is.
Live on the show.
No, it's not fully glued. It's not fully glued. So it is my frigate for my Bugman. So I have a custom converted Bugman's unit. That is my 10 mixed weapon Thunderers that are all like have special brew packs and stuff like that. And so I wanted them to have their own kind of rum runner ship.
Yeah.
And so this is my frigate for them. You can see it has the Bugman's tanking on the back, a nice set of organ gun on the front.
I love the organ gun. I'm gonna steal that. Shameless.
No, you're all good. And then it's docking right now at a rum station. Sorry, that piece isn't hooked on. It's docking at a rum station. You can see, and down here, I have a bunch of barrels, and I have a little hatch door that'll be attached and everything once I get everything put together and glued.
And you have the little battle for the pass dwarf helmet on the shovel.
Yep. I have down here you're seeing, and then I have some bombs, and then some of the old the gun rack stuff.
From the cannon.
Yep. And on these set pieces, I don't know if you can see this. Like I convert all of the text, so I scrape all the other symbols off, and we get let's see if I can get it to focus. We get Bugman symbol here, and on the piece that fell down, I use all of the bucklers to have all the dwarven symbols.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
Yeah, awesome. It's been a labor of love. It's a project.
It looks like fun to transport.
Yes.
It will be, but I have a bunch of tall storage things anyways, and I don't fly to any of my events. I can drive to all of them because where I'm at in the Midwest, I can basically hit everything but the West Coast. So I don't have to worry about transporting on planes.
Awesome.
Oh, cool. Well, that was a nice surprise. I wasn't expecting to see lots of really cool models. So that was nice. Cool. Well, let's very briefly go through the news before we start talking about your list and stuff. So for people that watched the last show, if you remember, we talked about these FAQs. These ones got removed. So ignore them. They don't exist anymore. These ones about wards and bodyguards. And then they've replaced them. So they've actually rewritten the wards text. Keeping on there is it doesn't specifically say the very precise timing before. Now it says it's usually done beforehand. So it's more of a catch-all wording. And then they've given us 2 new FAQ questions. So the first one is basically a limit to how many times that a ward can be, a dice roll can be used, essentially. And it's clarifying that certain types of bodyguard rules basically can't be used after a ward. So, but the examples they use are ones that do say that you negate the wound and then basically do a new wound. They don't use examples for ones where it says something like the Admiral's one, where it's you allocate the wound to another unit instead. So it's like transferring the same wound. So rules as written, currently there's 2 different types of bodyguard rules now, essentially.
Right.
Maybe as intended, because it's probably not meant to be like that. The previous FAQ indicated that it wasn't kind of meant to be 2 different ones, but then they removed that one. So, you have to kind of assume they removed it for a reason. So, back to having 2 different types of bodyguard rules. So check the wordings on those. And lastly, they've sort of clarified also the ones, abilities that are like ward rolls that do something else. Basically like the splashback mortal wounds. Some ought to just do it always to always, and some do it on, it negates the wound on a 4+, and then it does a mortal wound on a 6, back to the original unit. Some, it's always on the same roll. But it's basically clarified that those can't be warded as well. So, interesting limit there. I'm not sure there's much more to add about these. From a KO perspective, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm real mixed on this. I got to be honest. Because I like that it's not stacking. My challenge, though, is that there's just so many questions now around what wounds can't be negated.
Yeah, because if you took it strictly, then there'd be loads of things that can't be negated anymore.
Right. Like, you know, one thing that Vince trotted out yesterday was the shield mortal wound kickback from Daughters of Khaine.
Mhm.
Is that because it's just an ability that triggers an effect that forces a mortal wound back.
Mhm.
So like, even though it's not like a ward save, it's something that like triggers a mortal wound based on an effect. So it meets the criteria here.
Mhm.
Mortals from Witch Elf shields can't be negated anymore.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes me really uncomfortable. So
Yeah, I think. I mean, you kind of have to just look for the fact if it actually says anywhere in the rule the word negate,
yeah,
and then that's probably what we go by, unless they make it clearer that it's more about the intent. Because it's the same. That's the thing with the bodyguard thing is whether it says negate or not. But
right.
they haven't codified that somewhere. They're codified it somewhere that negating a wound is a certain process where
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't get allocated to a unit in the end. Then all the bodyguard rules would count.
Right. Right.
So yeah, some splashback things they stop a wound being allocated and then they also do damage. Some just purely do damage. And currently, rules as written, the ones that purely do damage back wouldn't count for this. But are they intended to count for this?
Yeah, it's a great question, and who knows?
I mean, I can kind of see the reasoning behind it because you wouldn't want to have a process where 2 units both have splashback abilities, and then you keep going in a cycle.
Just keep going back and forth.
Yeah, until eventually people aren't making the 4+s or whatever. Yeah, because that would just a lot of rolling for not much happening, which is annoying.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it would have been nicer if they probably left the bodyguard rule in. Right. And this second one, this new one about the splashback stuff is just it's opened up more questions, which a lot of FAQs normally do. In other news, Stormcasts are coming, and so are the Swampy Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Are you interested in any of them, Tom?
I like what I've seen. I'll say that. That's a very guarded statement, but one that I'll say I like what I've seen so far.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I haven't seen a huge amount, really. I mean, by this point, we would have expected to see more normally. Mm-hmm. The leaks are watertight at the moment.
At the moment, most of the leaks are watertight. What I will say is I like what I've seen.
Yeah.
So, points seem a little bit high, but I think we'll get used to that.
Oh, have you seen points?
Maybe.
Okay. Fair enough. You don't want to say. I haven't seen points. No, I mean, there's things like the chariots basically have a battle ram. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, it's 12 wounds for a 3+ save. So
I'm a big fan of the new dragons. That's what I'll say. I'm a big fan of the new dragons. Like all the everything, both the singles and the bigs and all of it. So,
well, that sounds promising because I'm hoping the wizard dragon will be good.
The answer is yes.
Yeah. Because I mean to KO is the question. If you don't want to tell me points, but is he under 400?
Come on now.
He's gonna be a mercenary thing.
He's a big boy. He's a big boy.
He's gonna be like a named mercenary for order or something.
He's really good. He's really good, and I think the wizard is probably worth his points. That's what I'll say.
But can I put him in KO? Is the question.
No, I don't think so. He is a Stormcast unit.
That's a shame.
Well, the Tempest Eye. Tempest Eye it is. We've got
he might be really good in Tempest Eye. That's what I'll say.
+1 save. First game, more move.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, interesting. So that means I have to buy that weird Atmec helicopter thing to convert a KO.
Yeah, the big old wings.
Yeah, so I use all the Atmec little wings for my, Celestin Prime and Indrasta conversions.
Yeah.
So it fits the theme. That's cool. That's exciting. I mean, new toys is always exciting. I'm a bit scared and worried about those orcs with the big crossbow, because even to an ironclad they can do 8 damage.
Yeah, I like them because I love how they're an answer to giants in a very direct way. Because the actual math averages to 12 wounds for a giant. Like a 5-up save has never been as important to a giant as they will when that's across the table from them. So
30 inches, and then you take 2 units of 2s.
Yep,
that's scary.
Yeah.
Let's see what they can do. Yeah.
Well, we know everybody gets better shooting than Kharadron Overlords.
They all get more range than we do.
I'm a fan of our shooting, honestly. And we can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, everything we have shoots, so we just that's the thing.
You just have to get it in range. That's the key.
Yeah, which we can. Okay, well, let's move on from talking about the stuff that hasn't come out then, because it sounds like you can't say certain things. So I don't want to keep pushing you on saying things that you can't. So let's move straight into the list. So, well, actually, before we talk about the list, let's explain why you had 2 lists.
Yeah. So Nashcon does what's called a mixed list format, and so everybody comes with 2 lists. They have to be the same allegiance. So I took KO. But they can be any number. There's no minimum number of unit mixes. There's no so they can literally be the same 2 lists, but with 1 endless spell difference. If your Tzeentch, you have a list that you want to run, you can just swap an endless spell or an item or who has what spells. That counts as 2 distinct lists. Or you can do what would be considered a transformative list, where the list 1 is completely different than list 2. And that's what I did. Is I wanted a list that could handle certain things that my normal Zilfin list couldn't. And so that's what we have here. Is I have 2 lists that are quite different, that play pretty different, but they actually share enough that I wouldn't get confused on unit stuff as I'm moving stuff around, because there's enough overlap between them. It's interesting, as I was testing both lists, the lists gravitated towards one another. Because I just kept finding that I wanted to have that 10-man mixed weapon unit in my army. I wanted to have at least a frigate to move it about if I needed to. And so so it's so the lists ended up mirroring each other a lot more than I thought they would.
So in case people are wondering, I think there might be some typos here from Lee's part.
Oh, really?
Because I think there's too many units in the battle regiment, troops. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, and you can only have 5 troops.
Well, maybe.
So plus there's only 1 alpha beast pack on the frigate as a battle.
Well, I don't have an alpha.
Oh, yeah.
Can't even go in there. So.
Ooh, that should say.
It's a bit confusing to me.
Wait, have I just completely made loads of mistakes on here?
Yeah, it seems a bit. Plus, I think there's too many leaders.
It should be
in the battle
4
regiment.
drops. No, so the command entourage is running 3 leaders.
Oh, yeah, because there isn't even an alpha beast pack.
No,
So
there's
just
no
ignore
alpha.
that.
It can't be. The frigate is not.
Yes, yes. No, not only that. I only took. So I was a 4 drop. So I had 3 heroes in there, and then everything else should have been in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't have 30 Arco, so there's too many Arco here. This is not my list. No.
I completely made it.
This is probably Lee's list from last week.
I must have made a
No,
mistake at some point.
it's okay. So I had.
Do you want to I can actually just bring out the
other document.
what you sent me.
Yep.
It's not as handy to look on the screen because it's.
You're fine. I mean, this is close. Let me just say that I only had 2 units of Arco, and everything else looks right.
And that's 10 Thunders, I assume.
Yes, and that's 10 Thunderers with mixed weapons. But they weren't full mixed weapons, and what I mean by that is, I didn't. I only took 1. Yeah, here you go. I only took on the mixed weapons. I only took 1 mortar. Yeah. Right.
That's what you do. That's how it works.
Because that's what you do. Yeah. Although I'll say, I'm open to doing 2 mortars now after doing mixed weapons because of because of Unleash Hell, because of the extra attack on that. It changes the math. It just does. Because of having like 2 shots on that thing and getting the +1 native from the mixed weapons, and oftentimes I'm burning a gold or I'm burning a triumph, so I'm at +1 to wound. So suddenly, like, that's down to 3s and 2s, no rend, D3 damage, 2 shots. Like, that's I kind of like that more than that extra rifle shot, right? So I don't know if I built the unit again, if I would actually just do true mixed weapons, or if I would stay that extra rifle. Okay. So, because again of how I'm using the unit, like I would shove that Thunderer unit down their throat. And so I would be setting up like 3 inches off their line most of the time. And so they had to deal with it. They had to run. They had to charge it. Otherwise, I was just going to keep shooting into their back line.
Okay, I just for people, because we put the show out as a podcast as well.
Yeah.
As the video.
You want me to walk through everything?
Yeah. So just for
absolutely.
everything.
So my main list, well, it's funny, my Zilfin list, which ended up being my main list. I assumed Gotrek was going to be my main list and my Thringy list. And what ended up happening was, no, I ended up playing Zilfin most of the time. But it's a kind of a standard Barak Zilfin list. Grand strategy was hold the line, so I had to keep a battle line alive. My battle line in this list were 2 Arco units and a frigate. So I was almost always going to have a battle line alive at the end of the game, whether it was one of those objective sitting units or whether it was that ship. Because when they're shooting ships, interestingly, the frigate isn't at the top of the list. My Ironclad normally is, or it's getting rid of my gun hauler, because the gun hauler it can jump around even no matter how wounded it is. And so most of the time, the priority, they want to get rid of those things. Like, they can put enough damage on the frigate to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. But they often will do that damage and then not kill it and then try to focus down the other things that have high mobility, leaving that battle line unit alive. And that ended up actually winning me one of my games. And I'll talk about that. So going up, let me go through my heroes, because I had a pretty unusual strategy here. The navigator, my navigator was my general, and he had the command trait Ride the Winds, which is any ship that he is garrisoned in is +3 to move. Then I ran an admiral, and I ran 2 chemists. One of the chemists has Spell in a Bottle with Warp Lightning Vortex, as to be expected. The other chemist actually had the +1 to hit. And most people, I haven't seen a lot of people running multiple chemists in a single ship, but putting out 6d6 shots
with 2 rend,
with -2 rend, actually does a lot of work. And the big combo here was I was doing my navigator for +3 move, and my the navigator for +3 move, and the Ironclad, the upgrade I went for the Ironclad was actually the +2 move. And so my base Ironclad was at a 15-inch move. If I overloaded it, it was a base 10-inch move, because the bonuses don't get halved, only the base movement does. Because I'm Zilfin, I can auto run 21 with that Ironclad. Everybody inside can shoot, and then with the Admiral, I can run and shoot. So getting 9-inch guns into range is not an issue with this list. And so originally I had built this to run 20 Arco in the ship, in the Ironclad, and just to run all the Arco forward in the ship, shoot 30 some pistol shots, all of the everythings, and then actually put the boat into melee, and then trigger the +1 to hit on everybody in the boat. And then suddenly you have Sky Pikes, and you have a bunch of heroes, and you have a bunch of people with a bunch of bonuses to hit and a bunch of melee attacks. So that was the original idea, and what ended up happening is that's not how I played it at all. I almost always did only the 10 Thunderers in the ship, and then all 4 heroes in that ship. for the other things, I also had the in the gun hauler, I had the upgrade that I could put, the compartment, so that I could put additional heroes in there. Because what I wanted to be able to do is if I ever wanted to deliver the Warp Lightning Vortex differently than wherever the ship was going, the Ironclad, I could do that by putting them in the gun hauler and having the gun hauler do your first turn move, your Zilfin move, and then have everybody else go somewhere else. But the reality is with a 21-inch move run, I can get almost anywhere I want on a 9-inch setup and then move 21 in my movement phase. And so I ended up just basically putting everybody into the ship every time for the Thunderers and then all the heroes. And so I have one of each ship. I have a gun hauler, a frigate, and a ironclad in this list. Most of the time, I would put 10 of the Arco in the frigate, and then I would put another 10 on an objective. Sometimes I would put both of those, both the Arco down if I needed to hold 2 objectives. And then the 3 riggers would either run interference if I need a blocker, or I would have them in kind of that strategic spot where they would have their 12-inch guns and then be able to heal any of the ships, because I would have the ships in a little cluster where all of them could reach. So that often happened. I'm 4-drop, so I'm out-dropping quite a few people, surprisingly enough. I can set up pretty aggressively because so much of my stuff has high mobility, so I can corner deploy, and then if they give me the first turn, I can still alpha and be at full effectiveness. So the big trick here was the movement shenanigans. And so often what I would do, just the normal play of this, is I would load those normal people up in the Ironclad. I would hero phase move it, drop and in the hero phase, I would burn one of the Chemist's gold on the Thunderers. So the Thunderers were reroll 1s to wound. And then I would dump out. So then I would hit my Warp Lightning Vortex. Most of the time I was using Warp Lightning Vortex to guard a flank, to shut down part of an army, and then I would hit on the end. So I would Warp Lightning the bulk, and then basically move everything to the end and slowly move down their line and shoot down their line, basically, to limit how much can actually get into my models. The other thing that I would normally do is then I would dump my Thunderers out of the boat when you exit a garrison. So the ruling, we were playing kind of the standard ruling of the War Scroll supersedes. I know there's a debate about this, but the War Scroll supersedes the core rules, meaning that you can disembark before you move. And so I was not disembarking and moving. I know people so I was taking kind of the most restrictive version, meaning I could disembark, but I could disembark mid-phase, but it had to be before I moved, is how I was playing it. So, which is kind of oldish KO rules, and it's kind of the most restrictive on myself, because I don't want to cheat anybody anything. And so I want to be more restrictive on that. And so, but that means that when I would dump out of the boat, I dump out 6 inches. I set up 6 inches out. If I set up 9 inch off the line, that means that those Thunderers are 3 inches off their front line of wherever I'm setting up. Most of them have a 9 to 12 inch range, meaning I can shoot 9 inches into the line. So if they're 6 inches back, I can easily get often into units that they've screened on the front. I would often put I would set them up in a V formation, my Thunderers, on the 6 inches, on the circle of the 6 inches, I would set up in a V. At the point, I would put my Chemist, and then I would the rest of them would be set up in the V, and then halfway down on each, I would have a Fumigator in each. And so basically anything that hit the main front of those Thunderers was at -2 to hit. And anything that could move around to the edges and hit the flank was still at -1 to hit against the rest of the Thunder unit. And so basically I would force them to come into my Thunderers, or just have to suffer all of this shooting, all this heavy shooting from it and the Ironclad, and oftentimes the rest of my ships, who all moved up and would focus all firepower on a corner of the battlefield and just wipe out everything. So that was kind of the tactics of how this list played.
It seems like it's an amalgamation of old Zilfin and New Zilfin, and well, I say New Zilfin, Zilfin from 2.0. But I mean, really old Zilfin, and not slightly older Zilfin, because the original Zilfin we didn't have fly high, and we were using the hero phase move and getting stuff out at certain times to get around stuff. And since we got fly high, it's kind of been okay. We'll default to we'll just fly high, and then it's fly high in the hero phase and then get out. But you kind of using the move rather than flying high in the hero phase.
Well, I can do either. And that's kind of the key, is that like it gives me real options, because I can fly high in the hero phase, and then because the way the wording is, you can still move in the movement phase.
Yeah.
Because the fly high restriction is movement in that phase. Mm-hmm. And so I could so if I wanted to, I could deploy 9 inches out and then move 21 more. So I could move deep into their line, and I did that against the Tzeentch player, and we'll see in game 4. And it put him in a really bad spot because I was deep in his line. Yeah. Like it was like he ended up pulling it out. He double turned me, and he was able to give me a game, right? But it was very easy. He was like, if I lose this priority, we're done. Mm. I mean, it played very much like 2018 KO.
Because basically it's easy to fall into the trap with the newer KO. So it's like, well, I can fly high, so why do I need movement buffs? But the thing is, like, especially in Zilfin with the hero phase fly high, but the thing is, these buffs on the movement you're getting in every round of the game, not just first round. So they're helping you out late in the game as well.
And it corrects the weapon ranges. Like, that's the key that I want to drive home, is that, like, everybody talks about weapon ranges. Like, they just ignore the Thunderer shooting, or not the Thunderer, the Chemist shooting. But again, that shooting is not an issue if they're literally, like, 3 inches off the enemy line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because I'm going to be able to put the Ironclad anywhere I want to get that shooting into their stuff. So,
plus what you can also do is the Guild Triumph from the Navigator for some extra move on top of that
for another D6. Yep.
Yeah.
I would often use that one for a rerollable unbind. If I had something I needed to shut down, but you're right, you can totally pull an extra D6 from that. Yep.
Okay.
That's a lot. A lot of travel.
Yeah. I mean, and again, like, everybody is thinking 9-inch zones. No one is actually like, what does 21-inch move look like? They're just not thinking about that. And that's actually part of what ended up catching out the final game that caused some of the drama, was that I had just enough move to get into the corner 3 inches off their line.
Yeah. And that 9-inch zoning is a big deal, really, for objective play. And with the tables getting smaller, the movement buffs are just have gotten a lot stronger.
Yeah, there's more terrain. Objectives are closer. There's less space to land your ship. So just moving up and throwing out people in front of it within 6. So that's still the old wording.
Yep.
It helps a lot.
Only within 6.
It helps. Yeah. It's a lot of movement for a hero. Like disembarking within 6, that's more than he normally moves.
Yeah. You effectively are most stuck at 7.
Right.
Because of that. Okay, let's move on to your other list. Hopefully we can go back to the screen share and I haven't messed this one up. Okay, so does this look right?
Go track, gun hauler, thunderers, frigate. Yes, that looks right. And so basically what you'll see here is that I've swapped out, I'll walk through this list. This is a Barak Zilfin. I actually didn't use the main ability, which is to include anybody from cities in this list. What I wanted here is I wanted pick 3 units, reroll ones. And I wanted the fight on death because I was running multiple small units of Endrinriggers. And those combination of abilities, I wanted, like, I wanted some of that flexibility. And so what I ended up running was the things that were the same. Let me start there. is I ran a frigate and a gun hauler in this list. I ran the same 10 Thunderers with mixed weapons. I still had 2 units of Arco. I still had 1 unit of Engine Riggers, all melee saws and pistols. But I added a second unit of those 3 riggers. I had an Admiral, but he was almost never in the ship because I gave him the Grudge Hammer, which meant that he's on 2s and 2s. Reroll 1s to hit and wound against heroes. So he's a nice little melee hero. That 2s and 2s, neg 2 damage. That is going to camp next to probably the 10th, either the 10 Arcanauts or the Thunderers, depending on where I'm kind of putting this. This is a lot more of a kind of a closer range list. I still had a Chemist, but I only had 1 Chemist. But the other 2 big changes is I had Gotrek in here, who is just a monster. He is just a monster. When in playtesting, Vince played his giant army against me in the Vice, which is definitely like one of the worst scenarios for KO. Like, mobility means nothing. He has all these wounds and all these bodies. And so I wanted to see if my worst scenario, if this list could weather that. And in the first, 2 rounds of play, going into turn 3, he wiped out, 80% of my KO units. Just with good charges, with, just, trying to get in. I was trying to put damage. Because the key to this list is, damage. And then Gotrek proceeded to kill his entire army in the next 2 turns. I would 1 round a giant every combat. So I would kill one in my phase, kill one in his phase, and I just went through and just basically killed his 3 of going to turn 4. He had 3 littles left that were running back. Yeah. And so Gotrek does a lot of work. He requires hard answers from the enemy. And in this format, the key is that he gives good solutions to some things that I don't have good solutions for. For things like the Vice, yes, I have to deal with their stuff, but now they have to deal with Gotrek in the middle. And they can't just ignore him because he's going to march to the middle and they have to do something about him. And then finally, I did, for my general here, the Endred Master with dirigible suit. And I gave him Foz bombs. And so again, this was the goal here was this is my DPS list. This is there are some armies that were just DPS checks. I dodged the Bone Splitter list that was on table 2. That was terrifying and had 240 wounds. A normal KO list just can't deal with that because you can't do enough damage. You're only doing damage in half the phases. And so my goal was to have a higher damage lineup. And so that's, for example, why I took Malefic Sky Mines on my frigate. Most people would be like, why would you ever take that? A D6 a chance at a D6 mortals on a flying unit, within 6 inches of your frigate. So it doesn't even have to be in combat. But I just wanted more damage. I wanted more damage options because I knew that I would run into situations where we needed more damage. And so that's what this list was built around, was how much damage can I put out? Yeah. So that's how this played. And I only ended up playing this in 2 lists. I played this against my second and third opponents. And Gotrek failed me both times. So he was underwhelming, which was very disappointing. So.
Okay, it's interesting to hear you disappointed with Gotrek. He's one of those things. He will either just do everything or nothing,
or just get ignored.
Yep. And that's the first time he just did nothing against the Coalesced Seraphon, because for some reason he went in twice into his Engine of the Gods and didn't kill it. I don't know how that happens. Mathematically, that doesn't happen. But it did. And so he just didn't do the work he needed to do. There's probably nobody said this, but people might ask the question, why didn't I use 3 Aether Wings to round out this list? Because in the current format,
you can't put any more allies than Gotrek.
Oh, that's a good call. Yeah. And that's the answer. And that's why I didn't do that. So, but Gotrek is worth it, right? And also, I almost always got the the Triumph era.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Extra
That's
plus one to
wrong.
wound is-
1955 points. That's huge.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you went for a DPS list without an Ironclad.
Well, I knew. So, for example, I don't like I don't want to say this. The Ironclad forces me to play a certain way, and I didn't want a centralized army. I wanted a decentralized army. If I would trade Gotrek for an Ironclad. Like if I wanted to, that's who I would trade. That's where the trade would be. But I knew if I faced off against Coalesced, and there was a big chance that I would, and I did, that the Ironclad gets all of its damage halved, just all the way down the line.
Played that today. Half of the output of the entire army.
Yeah, right. And
so I have these 15 dies, and they're all damaged. Oh no, they're only damage 1.
Yeah, and it's brutal. It's super painful, and that's so
hard.
And so that's one of the reasons why I didn't do the Ironclad.
Okay. I like the ideas of Endrin Riggers. Just if they don't activate first, they still get to fight on a 4+.
Yeah.
And they're nice roadblocks. Although, they're expensive now.
They are expensive.
Endrin Riggers are expensive.
Yeah. I wish even if they were 100, I would still have to think twice about taking them. There's just not a lot of, and because you can't reinforce, you're wasting reinforcement points on them in general to go to 6 because they're so squishy. I don't know. I'm really mixed on riggers. I really wanted to make Balloon Boys work, but what I will say is this: it was really nice to have a 12-inch move battle line unit. For some of the scenarios, it's really important. It's really important. So that's what I would say.
Okay. One question I'd have: you mentioned Malefic Skymines. Did you consider the battle ram and the gun hauler at all instead?
I did.
Spark Torpedo, sorry.
I, in general, don't want my gun hauler to be in combat if I don't have to, ever.
Okay.
And that's one of the things. The other thing with the Malefic Skymines is that it's way underappreciated because, yes, it's only flying units, but you don't have to be in combat to trigger it. And I ended up
in the combat phase, but it's
right.
You don't have to be in combat 6 inches.
Right. And I caught my dock player out with it. I just put 3 wounds on Marathi with it. That was one. I didn't have to waste any shooting. That's pretty good.
You could combo it nicely with the phosphorite bomblets because that's the same thing. You can run up and just be within 6 and start doing rolling the 2+.
Yeah, and I was afraid that I wanted mortal wound output, and so that's part of what I was trying to generate here was mortal wound output. So with Foz bombs, with the Malefic Sky Mines, with Gotrek, because when I wanted mortals, I would just re-roll all of my hits.
Yeah, fishing for 6s.
Fishing for 6s. Yep. So I'd be like, this roll doesn't matter. Pick everything up that's not a 6 and roll it again.
I need more 6s.
If I needed to break through, because I could get down to 2s to hit. That wasn't the issue. I'm more concerned about trying to get D6 mortals on those triggers against, again, really hard targets. That's the way to go. So
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things with Lisp and Wicket. You need to get mortal wounds in there somehow.
Yeah, since the whole zone with battle ram doesn't work that good anymore.
And the advantage. Yeah. The advantage here was that because this was so high drops, this is 11 drops, folks. I controlled the pace of deployment. I could see where everything was, so that I could put Gotrek exactly where he needed to be as my 11th drop.
Yeah.
Because I controlled deployment, it ended up making a difference in some matches because they didn't know where I was going. Because I could just throw a ship in the corner. And do my first 4 drops functionally as null deploys. Because it didn't matter because I was going to redeploy and then I could to reorganize. Hunter of the Heartlands is obviously amazing with Gotrek in it, as is having a Thunderer unit with Hunter of the Heartlands because they want to come in with monsters and attack that stuff and you can just ignore it.
Yeah.
So you ignore their stomps, that is. So so that was the logic here of why I went high mortal wounds. And in this 2-list format, like I could have a mortal wound heavy output, and I could have a more standard shooting list. And so that's what I ended up going with.
Would you have considered a Endrin Master on foot for extra mortal wounds instead of the Admiral?
Maybe.
I mean,
the thing,
attacks.
3 attacks. The thing I liked about, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the thing I like about the Admiral is he gives battle shock immunity.
Yes.
And so that was nice to have him if I wanted him as bodies near, like, if the riggers are floating within that 12-inch bubble and the Arco are nearby or the 10 Thunders are nearby, I knew that if he was nearby, I just didn't even have to worry about battle shock.
Mm-hmm.
And like you can lose, like it's a real bummer to lose a rigger to battle shock.
True.
Yeah. Especially the riggers.
No, I'm just asking because I recently played Barak Zon, same thing, full DPS with the battle. This is AOS 2, so not comparable, but with him having the extra 2 attacks on the Endrin Master. And I've never done so many mortals in a tournament. We played 11 games, and I think he did, on average, must have been 80 mortal wounds, minimum.
Wow, nice.
Like I kept rolling 3 6s, 4 6s, just people didn't expect it. Yeah, I'm doing my activate little hero in the boat. What? There's a hero inside. Yeah, it's just 5 attacks, re-rolling ones. 6s, 6 mortal wounds everywhere he was going.
Yeah.
He was going nuts. But obviously with just 3 attacks, it's much less output. But
I did consider it.
Him. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to stick in the frigate because then the frigate's overloaded. So
right.
Yeah, probably the Admiral with the battle shock immunity is the better option. Plus the
it's tough. Yeah, it's tough. Like there's just not. I want to run a melee boat. I'm going to run a melee boat at some point. And when I do that, like I can tell you that that Endrin Master will be in my melee boat.
Yeah, although melee boat, the battle ram is dead. You can't retreat and charge again now with the new FAQ. Yep. It's a shame. It's a shame. I had a lot of fun.
Well, you just need to go in and kill everything, and then you're free.
Yeah, just go in, shoot everything, +4 charge, which is not possible. Just +2. Oh yeah, hard times. We'll need to figure something out with Zon, because I think DPS with Skywarns in Zon, that's another way. Maybe, but they're expensive as well. Units of 6s, maybe they don't get the gold.
You're getting it on charges. We're here, like choosing 3 units on the battlefield and saying everything gets reroll 1s to hit is really good.
It's very really valuable in the new edition.
It's super, it's super valuable in the new edition. And so, like, I like this for no other reason than that.
Yep.
And when you put the chemist buff on your Thunderers, and if they're shooting one of those units, the +1 to hit natively, because if you're out of the boat, re-rolling 1s to hit, re-rolling 1s to wound. It's
a +1 from gold to wound.
A +1 from gold, and remember, I'm 1955, so the next turn I can +1 from triumph.
Yeah.
And so I'll get 2 rounds where everything's wounding on 2s.
Yeah. And it just becomes really efficient.
Yes.
And then the only downside is when they're ignoring when they're on a 2+ save, ignoring 1 rend. That's the downside. But it's an interesting list. I think we'll move on and see how these lists have played in the tournaments, because we are tight for time tonight, everyone.
We are.
If you're asking questions in the chat, so we're probably going to be ignoring them unless they're related to the tournament. If they're related to Tom's list in the tournament, then we can probably talk about them. If we have time at the end, maybe we'll go through them. But we don't want to make Tom late for picking up his kid. That would be, child services might get called or something. Okay. So first list was against City Sigmar Har Kuron.
Yep.
And that was against Tanya Scheibe. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly.
Tanya.
And she was also 1955. So
obviously,
everything we just talked about how great that was for getting a triumph went out the window.
So she went for a similar thing with a lot more wounds.
Yeah.
Tanya, I've played with Tanya before. She's a great player. She grudged me. Vince had to step out at the last Havoc, and so for the last game of that that team's event, she filled in. She was a ringer for Vince when he had to leave, and so Tanya and I have played together, but we've never actually played against one another. And so she grudged me, kind of knowing what this was. Like, she knew what she was getting herself into. And so her list is cities Sigmar Har Kuron, which is essentially a cities list. That's all the Dark Elves, and you can include Doc into it. It's a very kind of standard layout and list. She had a bunch of dark shards. The two kind of tricks that she had in her list was Vitriolic Spray, which, if you know what that does, she had that with Unbroil Spell Portal, so it lets you ignore the armor save. So you don't make armor saves on whoever gets Vitriolic Sprayed. And the other thing that she had, so she had that on 2 units. And then
she really good at the moment in the current meta.
It is. And then she also had a Hag Queen with Curse. And so, which does something similar. 6s to wound are mortals now. And so the whole idea here is mass attacks, right? She was running Chronomatic Cogs, Shackles, and then Umbral Spell Portal. Basically, I was matching up against my Thringy list, because that's what she's doing here. She's doing something very similar. She was all the drops, 1955. She was, built very similarly. And so I think that-that's the whole. And so we were against the scenario we were on.
Savage Gains.
Okay, with Savage Gains, which was funny. I had worked out that morning. Like, I woke up at 5 because I couldn't sleep, and I made a joke about needing to practice for Savage Gains. I put a post on Twitter, not knowing that this was actually the first scenario. On setup, basically, you can see here, she put all of her dragon, and basically 2 of her sorcerers up in that top right corner, with a 20 witch elves in the front, backed by 20 dark shards. Yeah. So as you can, there's a lot of damage over there, right? The other thing that this army has that's a neat trick is that the sorceresses all have a command ability that lets all of the dark elf units run and charge, or run, charge, and shoot. Ooh. And so they're like super brutal for mobility. But almost everything on the left-hand side is melee. So you can already see probably where this is going. Where all of her sorcerers were super stacked on the right side, if we're facing the right, where the dragon is, and where both of her acidic spray people were over there. The hag with the curse was over there. So all of the priority targets were on the right side of the board.
Okay, just to be clear, because I see an ironclad, this is your Zilfin.
This is a Zilfin list. Yep. Yes. So this is a Zilfin list. This is the round where my Zilfin list paid dividends. Because I did all of the things that you would expect. I took top of 1 because I dropped first. I don't know if we have if I have the next slide. And I just went straight into the corner. And so you can see I dropped off those chemists. The Thunderers, sorry. I dropped off the Thunderers with the chemist 3 inches off the Witch Elf line. Not afraid at all. And then that ship then shifted far to the right to be off of the edge of the dragon.
So before you got to this position, was the ship over here somewhere?
Yes, the ship was over there. That's exactly right.
Because you got your lightning vortex.
Right. So I dropped warp. Yeah, it was a little bit farther over a little bit. So I dropped warp lightning vortex basically into the middle of all of the melee units, which I wanted to do damage, but more importantly, I wanted to stop running. Right. Because it shuts off running now. And so I use that to lock up basically all of her melee units and the crossbows from the Corsairs that were all short range to limit their ability to engage. And basically then I just did this crush and pushed everything into, I started with, I killed out, I don't think I have any more images after this on this one. I might. No, I do. So I ended up. This is going
missing here. Yeah.
Yes, this is into turn 2. You can see my warp lightning vortex is still doing tons of damage. I think it did 34 wounds in this game.
Wow.
Because she just couldn't get away from it. Everything was moving 5 inches and no running. So she just had to inch her way out. And it just kept triggering. And then her Witch Elves long bomb charged and went into my Ironclad instead of the frigate. Or instead of the Thunderer, sorry. They went into the Ironclad, and the Ironclad stood and shot them down to 1 Witch Elf. Like I like she was down to like 13, and I did another 12 on the stand and shoot from the Ironclad, and just picked up basically the entire unit before it could fire. And then the heroes in the boat meleeed the rest of the Witch Elf. That
Then
last
you dropped the bomb on the ahead of the last one.
No, I wanted to. I still wanted to, but I missed that 4+. And then so I just basically eliminated that. I killed all the heroes out, which was the key. I wanted to kill the dragon. I killed all the sorceresses. I didn't kill the witch curse. She cursed my chemist, split the shots, killed the chemist, and did a bunch of wounds onto the did like some wounds, not a bunch, like 3 or 4 wounds onto the Thunderers. She was going to go into the Thunderers with the Witch Elves, but she ended up having to go. She ended up rolling a long enough charge. She went into the Ironclad, but it just shot up, torn to pieces. At that point, it was just cleanup. There was just not a lot left on the table that couldn't just be shot off. And they basically kind of trickled in. A couple units got into combat. I unleashed hell, killed that unit when it came in, and like it just continued to kind of chew through the remains of the rest of her army. And so this game ended at like in 4 functionally.
Okay.
So
makes me want to play Zilfin again with the Lightning Vortex.
Yeah.
I mean,
just a side note, because we're seeing beautiful terrain here in these pictures, but that one house in the bottom left, you can hide an Ironclad behind that. Were all the terrain huge. That big and that large?
So, no, that was one of the largest pieces of terrain. There was like 1 or 2 that were about the same size. And yes, you could hire an Ironclad behind it. So there were a couple really big pieces. Yeah.
Did you choose sides in this game?
I did.
Because that archway down in the bottom right, she could easily hide like all her sorcerers behind that.
Yeah.
I figure.
So I did, but the reason why she was humping that terrain piece on that other side was it was arcane.
Okay.
And so I knew that like it would force her into that corner. I would first drop, and if she was going to hump the arcane terrain, all of her sorcerers would be in gun range. And so I assumed that she would deploy over there for arcade, and then I would have, and I think she was hoping to dissuade me by having all the Witch Elves, by having all those Dark Shards. Just all of that firepower in such close range. But I went in guns blazing. So
okay.
That was the first match. I chose this for the grudge table. I chose this match because it looked like a Dark Elf table. And so I wanted to come give the Dark Elves a visit.
Awesome.
It's
Yeah.
really nice
I mean,
terrain.
it's
all 3D printed. Almost all the terrain at the event was 3D printed.
Yeah. Elves relying on magic doesn't pay off.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
I feel like this was a relatively nice matchup for KO because a lot of the stuff the base saves is poor.
Yeah,
you can half move the dragon. You could even vortex the dragon for no fly and half move if you want to keep it on one side and deal with the rest. Yeah. Although I'm not sure how
it doesn't half move now.
Dragon, how
Vortex got updated. Vortex just prevents running. It doesn't half move.
Ooh. No, the half move from the navigator. I mean.
Oh yeah.
It never did half move.
It never.
Yeah.
It just stopped flying and running.
Right.
They did change one thing on the Vortex, which I only noticed fairly recently was it's not just in the movement phase now; it's all moves. So it also affects charges and piling now.
Much better.
So a little bit of a buff there.
Yep.
But then you got the debuff from the 1 inch place apart thingy.
Yeah.
Do you find that was an issue placing?
It was really, really important, like of placement, and because my opponents weren't aware of the new War Scroll, like I am assuming they weren't. Like I explained everything, but like it can be like a smart player can counter Warp Lightning Vortex very easily now, and so like that was something that I was worried about. And which is another reason why when we go into the final game, and I'll talk about this, I didn't allow take back. Like once we started, because I was making measurements that where if he had changed his, like it would have given him tips on how to deploy differently.
Okay.
And it would have screwed me over. And so like in a very bad way where like the Warp Lightning Vortex wouldn't have been as effective.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. I think that was relatively simple game for you then.
Yeah, it was a very point and shoot. Like
how helpful to have those pictures there, because I think for people that haven't played
Absolutely.
Zilfin and stuff, I think that's almost like a masterclass on how to do it, and when it works well, what happens.
Right.
Yep.
And also, there's a reason why it was popular.
Yeah.
Zilfin, Warp Lightning Vortex. There's a reason why AOS Worlds, most of the KO lists had that. It works.
Yeah. And a great tip for avoiding going into your own Warp Lightning Vortex. To put it on the
don't charge into your vortex. It doesn't work out.
Yeah, put it on the stuff that you're not going to attack.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Let's move on then to the next game, which was against Seraphon. Zilfin again.
Yep. No, not Zilfin. So I went with so then it wasn't just Seraphon, it was Coalesced. So this was a monster melee heavy, stag heavy Seraphon list.
Oh, yeah,
and
so you took Thryng, so you didn't have the Ironclad wasn't half damage.
Right, so the Ironclad wasn't higher than half damage. That he was going to want to bring the stags in, so I knew that Gotrek could go in. Because Gotrek's never going to catch a Starborn.
No.
Anything.
No.
He's just going to teleport away from Gotrek for the entire game. But against Coalesced, he has to come in. And so I can line up those fights. Yeah,
I've got my picture wrong. I put Zilfin pictures for the Zilfin games.
Yeah.
I've got them wrong. I've obviously done.
No, you're good.
3 and 4 instead of 2 and 3.
You're good.
So it was against John Galvin. We mentioned it was Coalesced.
John is from Atlanta. He's a store owner down there. He was a gentleman. He was a great player. Just super. I would roll dice with him any day. Like Tanya as well, but John, like I had met Tanya before. This is the first time I met John, and we had a great game. He played a hard game. He was smart. He ran an Engine of the Gods as his general. He also had Lord Croak, Skink Star Priest, a Saurus Astroloth Bearer, and then he was running. Where are all of his stay?
Yeah, well, where are the dinos, Lee?
Yes.
What did you do to the list?
What?
Where's the dinos? They're just missing like 500-600 points of dinos.
Because he had like 3 Stegodons that are not here, and then or 2 maybe it's 2. And then because Engine of the Gods is a stag too. And then 10 Saurus Guard, 2 units of 10 skinks, 5 chameleon skinks.
I just missed.
There they are. Yeah, 2 Stegodons that were on the bottom. Yeah. And so it's funny. I made a decision very early on because, like, looking at this list, I could do one of 2 things. Either you go against Croak, or you ignore him. Those are your 2 options. And with his rules, he also had 10 Saurus Guard, which meant he had a 2-up ward. And so if I went after him, I would have to kill out all of that stuff. You got to remember, this isn't heavy shooting, so I don't have a strong alpha. So if I went into him, I could maybe, like, I needed Gotrek to get in, right? And so the challenge with that is if I need Gotrek to get in, then I don't have the damage that I need to front load to alpha Croak down. So what that had me choose to do is to ignore Croak.
Okay. When you chose your list, did you know what kind of Seraphon he was playing?
I knew that he had 2 options. Like, I could look at both of his lists. I didn't know which of the 2 he had. Both of the 2 he had were Coalesced.
Okay. That explains why.
So I knew that I was going against Coalesced. So that's the advantage of doing a transformative list, is that you don't know what you like. You can blind man's bluff, against your opponent. So what we did here was I think I have my deployment. I went first here as well. And I took a photo after I moved my Ironclad, or after I moved my frigate and my ships. Okay, so Pharaoh Foray, it's 3 objectives spaced out. I basically put 10 Arco on terrain on the left objective, and then everything else on the right. And you can see this is after my movement phase had started. I had moved my ships up to the 9-inch line up in the top right, because basically what I decided to do is Croak was on the left. I was like, if I'm going to ignore him, I'm just going to chew through all of his stegs. That's all of it. That's where all of his damage is, other than Croak. And so the idea was I was just going to go down the line and hit every single one.
We can see Gotrek in the middle on his own.
On his own.
Yes, exactly. And he ran. Are you surprised in that first movement phase? Just trying to get out there. Auto run 6. The goal was to get him into the Saurus Guard in the top left. Into any of that, right? Like the goal is to get him into any of that stuff.
Just into combat generally.
Into combat somewhere to start chewing through stuff. But so I was just going to send him at the middle of their line and hope that that Croak didn't just faint and go the other direction, because that would have been a possibility of his, which would have been just to do that. But he kept it there because he was afraid of my ships from jumping over and taking that objective, which is like that's the goal. And so I started chewing through ships, or chewing through stegs. And it didn't actually go as well as I wanted to. My shooting didn't go that well. I moved everybody out. I dumped off my Thunderers. And this was just a slog. And Croak was just doing his Celestial Deliverance like all the times, because I don't have any Unbinds here. And so he was just picking off wounds on everything slowly, of just knocking down those units, of just grinding down all of my everything. And so I don't know if I have another image. I think I maybe only have one more of this one, where just from the other angle, where it kind of shows my lineup. And so then on those ships, I dumped everything out, and I just started chewing on those stegs down the line, just slowly. Most of our lines just kind of held. And what I mean by that is we just stayed on our objectives. Neither of us really charged, because he had a lot of like super long range shooting with the stegs. He had a bunch of AOS. Question Jordan asked about battle tactics. Yeah, battle tactics sometimes were an issue. Like you had to think through 2, 3, 4 turns ahead what you were going to do. And I missed some battle tactics that I just shouldn't have missed. In turn 2, or going into turn 3, Gotrek went into the general, which is just a engine of the gods. And I was like, oh, this is easy. This is not a problem. And so I was like, I'm going to kill the general. He didn't do it. Gotrek wasn't able to cut him down. Between the Coalesced reducing damage by 1, Gotrek moving down to 2 damage instead of 3, not getting any 6s on the mortals, the Dial Pylon, it just didn't happen. Sometimes he just whiffs. And so like that hurt. And then he like retreated out of combat, and then like the engine summoned like 2 sets of 10 Saurus, like multiple turns in a row. And so like Gotrek just got like just inundated in bodies and couldn't get where he needed to get. And so like this ended up being a slog. He did a bunch of damage, killed a bunch of people. Like none of my people were dying in combat, so I wasn't getting my 4+ pile in. Like this was a very difficult match. So much so that I had resigned myself to losing. Like I did the math, looked at it, and I was like, I've lost this match. But I was like, I'm going to try to get as much as possible in order to like get a minor loss, right? Because of the way that they were doing it, it's the differential between battle points each round was the tiebreaker. And so I wanted to just minimize that for later. And I got within 1 point of him at the very end of the match. And we added it up, and I was like, I think I can. And like I was like doing all a bunch of hinky stuff. I did a long like 10-inch charge to get into his territory for my battle attack. Just all the everything, just trying to squeeze out those points. So I lost by 1. Right? Oh, and the things, by the way, the things I chose all the stegs as my reroll ones. Like those 2 stegs and the engine of the gods. And we get to the end, and I say, oh, you got me. It's 2021. And he stopped and he said, did you get your
grand strategy?
Grand strategy. And I was like, oh yeah, I just keep battle line alive. Like I have this is battle line, this battle line, this battle line. And he looked at me and he said, mine was keep my monsters alive. And Croak's not a monster.
Nope.
No.
And so I killed all the stags. I did end up killing all the stags, and so I jumped him 2 points.
Yeah.
So the game was over, but the grand strategy flipped it.
Mm-hmm.
So I should have lost this game by that, by the normal scenario metrics, but because grand strategies are worth 3, it ended up changing the results of the game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this is the game that I like barely squeaked by. Like I was like, I lost, that's terrible. And he's like, nope, you got it. So this was not a win that I felt good about.
Yeah.
Where you just barely squeak by. But again, I missed a bunch of strategies, or I missed a bunch of battle tactics because I fluffed that stuff and I didn't kill stuff when it should have died. And like on the math, like just the numbers turned against me. I wasn't able to get my pile-in damage. Like I spent a lot of time zoning, keeping his chameleon skinks out of my backfield. But because of that, like one of my units of riggers had to stay back there floating around, kind of continuing to kind of move about the zone. So I lost their damage. And so it was a painful match. It was a great game. It was a nail biter till the end. So that was the match too.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting, the interaction with those battle tactics, especially the ones like kill the general. Because as soon as you pick that, they're putting best day ever on that guy.
Yep.
And he's going to get all out defense later on.
Yep.
And the same with the monster ones. The monster ones aren't so bad, although because they don't have that best day ever for that.
Right. And oftentimes if they're keeping monsters alive or whatever, like they have multiple monsters.
Yeah.
Although you have to choose, you have to designate a single monster. So that's not a big deal.
Yeah, and the same with the battle on one perspective. Because they've got multiples, because they don't have, it's the best day ever thing, it's the main thing with the general.
Right.
And
right.
The fact, they're just
it's brutal.
Main. But okay, let's move on then to the next game.
Oof.
This was Barak Zilfin, wasn't it?
It was Barak Zilfin, and this is what I had built this list for, and this is what he built his list for too. So it was the Vice, Daughters of Khaine. This is like a nightmare matchup. It's Khailebron. So he everybody's a -1 to shooting. He had the Bloodrack Medusa. He had Morathi within the Shadow Queen, obviously. He was running 15 Bloodstalkers, so the shooty snakes, 2 units of 20 Witch Elves, 5 Doomfires, 5 Life Takers, which are the melee Canary. That Doomfire also had Mirror Dance, so he could put the Shadow Queen and Morathi wherever he wanted on the board. So you can just see, like, this was just a painful, like, setup. It just was.
Yeah.
The Bloodstalker shooting is terrible, especially the hero phase. He had all the teleport needs. Like, it's just, like, this is a bad matchup. Like, I had to put wounds on Morathi early because then otherwise for every round that you're not doing that, that's another round of combat she's in. My army can't really withstand that. And she can go camp on the objective at the very end. So it's just a very, like, difficult setup. So and Josh was a treat to play.
And the Vice with a shooter unit, you can pretty much just park them in the middle. If you've got 2 other units, which he's got 2 big units of Witch Elves here, you can just put them in like a little triangle in front. And you can't go in.
Either they unleash hell on everything that comes close.
Yeah.
Or you 24 inches shooting is bad.
Yeah.
It's ugly. It's brutal. So I rolled up to this and I was like, I just don't know if I can do it. And so I don't have photos of this match. I apologize. So I'm just going to describe. We're going to use the Vice map to describe what happened. So I was on the left-hand side with the pink. In the 2 corners, I started my units of Endrin Riggers, the 2/3s. Yep. Where the objectives are in 2 and 3, I had both of my Arco units, my 10 Arco. And then like on the top one, I had a Chemist and a Chemist and the Admiral up there. And then on the bottom, where that line is, like I had all of my ships, like my 2 ships, my the 10 Thunderers were in the ship. My commander was in there, or my commander, my admiral, my engine master was there. So for him, do you see where 2-3 is on his side on the top one?
Yeah.
That imagine if that thing, that entire thing was a piece of terrain.
Oh, okay.
So there's this huge terrain on his side over there, and so he parked his snakes in the back.
Did that block him actually putting models on the objective?
No, because of where it was, he could still have it, but it limited how many models either of us could really get over there.
Was it within 3 inches of the objective?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They weren't moving terrain to make it legal for the battle plan.
Right. They just were there. So we were somewhat limited. So he parked all of his witches between the top 1 and the 2 and 3, not witches, sorry. He parked all of his bow snakes, up in that top right with the general, between 1 and 2, or the 2 and 3 and the 1, like in that corner, like in that back corner.
In here.
Yep. And then he put his he put the Shadow Queen in the bottom, between 2 and 3 in the bottom, lower, to trigger that objective. And then he basically had like everything, or then one set of witches was above 2 and 3, so he top loaded. Yep, that was one set of witches up there, and then the other set of witches was below that. Right there.
Well, on this here.
Yeah, right there. And then he had the Doomfire down below, right there. Like the Doomfire were down near there. And he had Morathi in the center with the witches. So the witches were kind of fanned out, and Morathi was she was just behind the line there. But she was within range of the Shadow Queen for the Shadow Dance and all the everything, right? So I went... So he gave me 1, the top of 1, because he outdropped me. And I took Gotrek. Oh, Gotrek was in the middle of my line. Just dead middle.
So Gotrek was here. And can I make a guess?
Yes.
Did he run over here?
That's exactly what Gotrek did. He just ran straight out.
Yeah.
And then I took all of my ships and moved them up to the 24-inch line off of his... So just the edge there, just about there, off of, that area right there, both ships. And I just put, I used all my long guns and put all of those wounds on Morathi.
Yeah.
And I ignored everybody else. Just ignored everything. So I basically wasted my top of 1 with just long range guns and said, go.
Okay.
So he saw an opportunity, and I hoped he would, with Gotrek out in the middle like that. And so what he did was he swung hard top. Okay? And he teleported his snakes out, so he pushed them way out into that open space. He mirror danced, dropped Morathi and Morathi Kane up there. Everything went up there basically.
Yeah.
Okay. And what his goal was.
We've lost it.
Are we still live?
I believe we're still live. We just lost Tom. The one person we need. we can't interview Tom without Tom. Okay. Well, I'm guessing the goal was... I don't know if they're going to try and kill Gotrek. That sounds like a risky strategy to me.
Oh, I mean, he has nothing there for lookouts, sir. He's on his own. There's a lot of shots in that bow snakes.
I wonder if Tom realizes he might just be talking to himself.
Oh dear. Well, this is
sorry about this, everyone. Oh,
great
he's
podcast.
back.
Oh, there he is. Hello.
Can you hear us, Tom?
I'm back, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry about
Yes, you're
that.
back.
I apologize. Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can.
Yes,
back?
yep, you're back.
Okay.
We were
wonderful.
just guessing
Sorry
that
about
his
that.
plan was to try and kill Gotrek.
Yes. And you know what? He doubled me, and he did.
Oh, okay.
Ooh. Okay.
So he went in on Gotrek. And he got as much shooting as he could with the bow snakes during his movement or during his normal shooting. And then he went in on Gotrek with the why is this signal not working? Weird. Then he doubled me, and I was like, oh, this is not good. But in order for him to secure Gotrek's kill, he had to in order for him to secure Gotrek's kill, he had to allocate enough shooting to kill him, which basically ate up 3 rounds of snake shooting.
Yeah.
Because it was his shooting phase, his hero phase, and his shooting phase again.
Yeah.
And he moved all of his witches up. So he went, and so he did some damage on the Arco unit in that top left that was guarding. And so like he went, like, again, he went heavy into that, but he set me up for the double.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up costing him the game.
Did he leave? Did he still have stuff on these objectives?
He left. He left the snake general. He left the snake general on the top one. But again, like behind the snake general were a bunch of witches. Behind or like in front of them, right? Like 20 witches, easy reach. The bottom one were the 5 Doomfire warlocks. And so I think he expected me to go after that back objective, and I didn't. By the way, my rerolls were all of both witch units and the snake unit. My reroll ones. And so what I did was I slowly continued to put wounds on Morathi every round. I would do 3. With a little bit of shooting here and there, some splash damage. I would throw like a Endrin Rigger unit into combat with them, right? And so what I ended up doing was I dumped my, like he had pushed up enough that I was able to dump my Thunderers out, right? And my Thunderers and my Frigate went in and obliterated that Witch Elf unit, the first Witch Elf unit. And I got some damage, and then everything else I could get in went on the bow snakes, and I lifted like 3 or 4 of them, not a lot. But I took the, and he took that top objective, by the way. Like I had enough that was like, he killed some, but I had enough that were out. Like he shot me off the objective, the range, which was fine. And he ended up moving Morathi up to claim that objective. And so it was a moral victory for him because he's like, I took this objective and I killed Gotrek, and like he was riding high, but he moved himself into a super vulnerable position. And so then I jumped my Endrin Master in the gun hauler to his back line, his top 2-3 objective, stole that from him, and then and put a bunch of damage on his witches back there, or his with my long guns, his bow snakes. And then what ended up happening was I doubled. I came in with put some damage on the other Witch Elf unit that was back there. And then because there were 2 Witch Elf units. The Thunders dealt with the one, and then the next turn when I doubled him, I went in with my Admiral and with the gun hauler, shooting into the other Witch Elf unit, dropped Foz bombs on him, and killed that unit out. And then all the rest of my shooting, my Thunders were within range, killed the rest of his snakes. So going into his bottom of 3, he had like Morathi left on 3 wounds, and 5 Doomfire warlocks, and his general snake, and that's it. I killed everything else.
Yeah.
And so like I had a lot of gas left. Like, yes, he took Gotrek, but I just had enough gas that I just ended up killing basically everything else out. And I finished off Marathi with the D3 mortals from the frigate.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Or the D6 Sky Mine, Malefic Sky Mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's D3 and then
It's
D6 if you roll
D3,
well
D6,
enough.
Yep.
Yeah, depending on what you roll.
Yeah. And I think I did enough to kill her. And so, like, it was just, and suddenly, like, I had the objective, I had the center, I had a whole unit of Thunderers on it, and he had 5 Doomfire Warlocks.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the game.
Yeah.
So it was a tough matchup, but I'd hoped to bait him into the middle to leave himself exposed. He did. He got the double what he wanted, but I limited the damage of how much he could do on the double because of how much he had to dump into Gotrek, which ended up, let me walk away with the win. So that was the Vice. It was a tough match, but but it ended up doing what it needed to.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, yeah, so that's an interesting one because if he ignores Gotrek and Gotrek is alive come round 4, obviously he will have taken damage on a lot of his stuff by then.
Right.
So they're not going to go trekking round 4, 5.
Right. Right.
But then if he pushes forwards, and he leaves his other objectives open.
Right.
So
I took that top objective when I he took my top objective and I took his. We traded that round. So anyways, so that was the Vice. It went really well, surprisingly well for such a hard edge dock list on that scenario.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
Okay. Well, let's move on to game 4 then. Which this artwork is wrong because this this is Zilfin, but it was against Tzeentch. Eternal Conflaguration.
So this is old school Tzeentch, like all shooting attacks is functionally what Eternal Conflag is. It's his interesting take on it, Esteban's take, which was great, is he ran 3 burning chariots, which is like 500 and some points. But each of those has like a greater exalted flamer on it that's throwing out like 6 attacks, doing a D3 damage each. Like it's just insane. And he can restore models with his stuff, so he could potentially bring chariots back. But that's where all the damage was. And so I knew at the top of 1, or if I went first, I would need to get rid of this. I outdropped him at 5 drops. And so I knew what I was facing down. So he was running a Fate Skimmer, Herald of Tzeentch on Burning Chariot. So his general was a Chariot, or a Mutability, which gave up like the rerolls or the +1 to wound. I don't know. They have a bunch of stacking bonuses.
Reroll casting, I think, wholly within.
No. It's the one that gives a 12-inch aura of +1 to wound or something like that. So if he wanted to shoot out the Fate Skimmer and the 3 chariots, they could all go together, and still have all of the bonuses and all that stuff. Everybody's at +1 to Ren, so his shooting is at Ren 2, and it was just filthy, right? And you
can't ignore the pink horrors either, which are a pain to shift.
Right, like they're just a lot of wounds, but there's no saves. No meaningful saves. So a lot of my just bulk shooting could just get dumped into them. And so and then he had a Fate Master, Kairos in the back. He backboarded Kairos smartly. Blue Scribes. He had 2 units of 10 horrors, pink horrors that he used to block off the board or to zone with or to shield. And then he had the 3 burning chariots behind them. He was a great player. Estaban was smart. He's from the Dallas area. We had a great game, but I mean, he's only 71 wounds. Yes, there's more in those horrors, but if I can get into the heroes, if I can get into those chariots, that's the key. And so what?
I was going to say it's rare for an opponent's army to have less wounds than a KO list.
Right, exactly.
And that's
almost everything's on a 6-up.
Effectively, he has more.
Yeah.
That's 100 wounds in the pinks. It's interesting that he doesn't
details.
He doesn't have the spell portal for Kairos.
Right.
Mortal Wound,
He
like
had
six
Spell
Mortal Wound
Portal
spell.
instead of Geminids. Like that was his alternate list, was Spell Portal.
Oh.
And he went with Geminids because, and I think that was a smart play because Geminids shut me down for 2 turns. It just straight shut me down. So, and I'll talk about that. But so if you jump in to the scenario,
so
we played First Blood, very standard. He corner set up in the left. I super corner deployed in the right because it didn't matter.
That's one
Right.
big castle.
Yep. And so he set this huge castle with his chariots, and you can see all of my board parties over there with my wound counters. And so he set up in that top left, and I took so I set up as if I was trying to get away from his shooting, and hoping that he would set up wrongly. And basically what he did was, you can see how he set up, right? Where he like had some pretty solid zones. He had some horrors in that building. He thought he was safe. And then go ahead and jump forward the next slide. So I then moved everybody out. This is after my movement phase. Dump the thunders that you can see. You can see I dropped the warp lightning vortex like right in the middle of all the horrors and Kairos and the edge of the chariots. It would clip a couple of his heroes. And then I just moved the ironclad to the other side of the building because it has like a base 15-inch move. And it got all of my, like the thunders were within range of all the horrors and the chariots, which was the key. And then the boat was in range of the chariots and the general. And so all of the thunders went into the chariots, and then I cleaned up additional shooting by going. I'm sorry, the ironclad went into the general first, which got rid of one of his debuffs, which is a -1 to hit, like item. So I killed the general out, and by doing that, then it made the thunders then went into the chariots without the penalty to hit the item that's in Eternal Conflag. And if you go to the next slide, then I charged the ironclad in with a 10-inch charge. And I pulled everybody into combat. Okay. The remaining casters, that horror unit, he only had 1 unit not in combat.
Yeah.
And the hope is that he would pile in with that 5 wound Fate Weaver, like, or the one Fate, either the Fate Caster or Kairos, because my Admiral was in there. So I was hoping he'd come in because the Admiral would put 6 wounds on him, no question. These the Admiral's melee attacks. But he kept them out. And he just, fought with the horrors. And then I think that's my last slide. But what ended up happening here, it was really interesting. Like, he's like, if I don't double you, game's over. Well, he doubled me. And what he ended up doing on his turn is he retreated Kairos and the other caster out. Because they were locked into combat, which shut down their shooting attacks. It limited what they could do. He dumped everything into the ironclad to kill the ironclad. That's fine. And like, he spelled down, he was just killing out my heroes and everything in the ironclad. Well, none of that actually matters, right? Because all the damage is actually in that thunder unit. All the damage, I still have 2 other boats. I had everything on those 2 center objectives. And he dumped basically 2 rounds of shooting into the ironclad, killed some of the heroes, left like my chemist back there. The chemist ended up charging into those blues on terrain and ended up holding them for another 2 turns because of the -1 to hit. Because after that first round of combat, I was up +1 to save. I could find a sour, and it just made him like, I just ate up all of his attacks and made him grind on me. Even though like it ended up still turning into a game of back and forth, where I ended up pulling it out, but it ended up being a lot closer than I thought it was at the end of the top of 1, which is what we see here. So, but it was basically just a good old fashioned KO Tzeentch shootout. Like right before this match, I posted a like suns out, guns out with a bunch of guns memes because like that's what it was. It was all the guns all the time. So, Just give me a second. So that was this match, and it went pretty well.
Do you know what I like most about this? Lee, if you
What's
go
that?
back one slide, please. It's this awesome Destiny dice tray that he has.
Yeah, dude, it was 3D printed and it was
This
beautiful.
is like,
Yeah,
please, if you're a Tzeentch player, first of all, shame on you. But secondly, get one of those so I can understand what you have left. Destiny dice. Because there's always like, yeah, these are my Destiny dice, and then there's 100 different dice next to it, and I always get confused which is which.
Yeah.
I love this. Awesome. Well done.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like a simple game, but it sounds like it did get close. So
it was. It was determined at 1, like at the top of 1, based on setup and based on how much damage. If I had put even a little bit more damage in to like those heroes, like the game would have ended much earlier, and it didn't. There's a round that a bunch of shooting of mine fluffed on Kairos, and when that happened, I took him down to like 4 wounds, but I needed him to die, and so I missed my battle tactic that round, stuff like that, and it's painful when that doesn't happen. So
that was the thing I wasn't sure on, was what exactly made it so close. But yeah, hearing like when you try and kill something, it doesn't die. That normally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Kairos has a tendency to live on a wound or 2.
Yep. And then like him being able to summon, like he took that, he shifted his like all that stuff in the top right, he shifted out, right, and then resummoned another unit, and then came in. And what ended up happening was he dropped Geminids like right in that bit, like that pack. And Geminids was ticking every hero phase. So both of our hero phases, and eating through Thunderers and Endrin Riggers and the Chemist that was there, and the Frigate and the other Arco unit that was in that Frigate and the Gun Hauler. Like that all adds up.
Yeah.
And I couldn't issue commands to any of them. So I couldn't auto run 6. I couldn't stand and shoot when the one horror unit came in. I couldn't do any of the normal things that you do. Geminids is, as I talked about on the show yesterday, Geminids is really scary against a shooting army. Like, and you don't realize that. Like, I couldn't trigger defense against his shooting that was coming in. It was ugly.
Yeah, I'm also thinking it's awesome for a spell in a bottle.
Yes.
Yeah. But you don't get to control it.
Yeah.
Once it's released on Spell in a Bottle, you don't get to control it.
Yes, although in some ways that's a little bit of a buff, because the strict rules as written before was he controlled it, but then it was controlled, but he couldn't move it.
Right.
Because he was like it was caster for controlling, but wizards for moving. So at least you've gone from no chance of moving it to 50% chance of moving it potentially.
Sure. No, that's true. That's true.
We know so at least we know where we are with it now. And if you move it far enough away and then don't move into range of it, it's only then if you get doubled that it's an issue.
Yep.
Jordan
asked, how did he pull it out? He doubled me. The key is he doubled me here. And he was able to just put enough damage on the various units. He killed out the Ironclad finally. Like, all of that was just enough for him to be able to squeak back, and it hurt. Yeah.
I mean, just stopping us from doing Unleash Hell is a big deal. With Geminids. So.
Yep.
Okay, so that was game 4, wasn't it? So last game, the controversial one against Seraphon again.
Basil was he was a gem. This game got some flack because it functionally ended as it started. Like, we rolled dice, and the game went 45 minutes, but it got determined on setup, as sometimes happens with Zilfin KO, right?
Yeah.
Like some games are simply determined on setup, and that's what happened here. And so Basil took his Salon Starmaster. I knew he was teleporting on both of them, so I just simply couldn't run as a Go Trek. I had to run my Zilfin list. I had no option here. He had a Salon Starmaster, a Skink Starseer, Skink Priest, Astroloth Bearer, 2 units of 5 Saurus Knights, 3 units of 5 Saurus Knights, 3 units of 10 Skinks, 2 units of 3 units of 2 salamanders each, and soul snare shackles, and he's a 2-drop. So he's doing the same thing I am, right? Like he's doing alpha shooting.
Yeah,
and he outdrops me with more wounds. As a scenario, we were playing power and numbers. This scenario should never, ever, ever be in a battle pack. I hate it because of how the tracking works. Because you have to track how long you've held each objective, and you can burn at any point in time, even without them, like even without having units on those objectives.
Yeah.
So starting in 2, you can burn. It's just a very bad matchup for me. Now, the key is that if you have a battle line unit holding an objective, they trump non-battle line units for holding that objective.
Yep.
So the key is you want to have as many battle line units as possible. I had a frigate and 2 Arco units. So it was ugly. And so I set up defensively. You can go ahead and jump forward 1. Yeah. I'm sorry that this is. Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I mean I'm sorry that this is rotated, but you can see. So I castled in the middle on my middle objective with my ships, and I had the ironclad in the back, and it was pushed out such that he couldn't alpha shoot me. Like he couldn't get into my Thunderers and my ironclad. And then I had an Arco unit on the left objective. I had an Arco in the frigate, and so like if he wanted to go first, he was going to have to come into my 2 bad ships. That was the goal. And then everything else was kind of back, and I was basically inviting him to come at me, bro. What he did was he put his 2 of his Saurus Knights on the line to zone me out. In that center, in that terrain piece, he has 10 skinks. He has 10 more skinks behind the 1 pyramid that's not his. And then he corner deployed his other pyramid. Okay. Put 5 Saurus guard back there with his Slann behind it. And his intent was to cut off line of sight to the Slann. And it's because he's 2-drop. He's like, I deploy all this. I put all these guys in the heavens. And you can see like everything that's in the heavens. It was like 800 points or something. Or 12.
All the salamanders. Yeah.
Yeah, all the salamanders. 1 of the units of skinks. 1 of the units of knights. And then I'm sitting in my chair and he asked me, I'm putting him back here to block line of sight. And I respond, that blocks line of sight from most angles. And as you can see, like if I was on the back line, clearly, like on his back line, I would have clear line of sight to him from 24 inches. So like the whole point was he wanted to limit line of sight. He put him back there. I agreed, yes, that covers line of sight from most angles. And that's what I said. Now, I wasn't checking angles at this point because I was sitting down, right? And I hadn't finished deploying. On my 1 drop, I deploy all my ships and then I put each of my heroes in the ship. So I'm not actually looking at how he's deploying because it's not going to matter, right? And so I'm sitting in my chair, I'm putting my guys into my thing, and I say, yeah, like from where I'm sitting, I can't see him, which was true. And I assumed he was going first. So I wasn't really paying attention to what he was putting where. Because I knew he was going to teleport out and deploy everything everywhere, right? Well, he looked at it and he goes, well, I'm going to give you the top of 1. Excuse me? Are you sure? Yeah, I'm going to give you the top of 1. Oh, okay. Well, let's see what I can do. So I go and I lay a 9-inch stick out. I know everything's deployed in the corner. I know that if I can shoot that Slann off, everything can't come onto the table.
Nothing's coming down. Yep.
Yeah.
Nothing's coming down. And so I put a stick 9 inches out from his knights or his guard that were in the corner. And you can see, like I measure it out and I set it there and he's like, okay, well, you can't see him from there. Right. And I explained all my abilities, of course. Like I walked through my war scrolls and I said I have a 21-inch move if I run and shoot, and I laid out all of the everything, right? And but again, I was assuming he would go first. And so, but he gave it to me. So I laid out a 9-inch stick, and he said, "Well, you still can't see me from that 9 inches." And I went, "Yeah, I think that's probably true, but ultimately that doesn't matter because I have to be able to see him from 3 inches off of his line, not 9."
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved up and I started measuring. Like I marked everything, measured it to the 3 inches off of his line, set down and then measured out. Or no, sorry, I measured my 9 inches, and I started to lay out my warp lightning vortex, and I dropped it. I don't think I have another image past this, do I?
No, you don't.
I don't think I do. No, I don't. So I dropped it like in the middle of between the two pyramids, so I could catch like everything in all of that, right?
Yeah.
And I like the 1 inch was really tricky because like technically that one thing's garrison, so that model and the garrison fills all of it. And I began to explain, and he was like, "Well, you can't see my guy to shoot him." And I said, "Not here, but I still have 21 inches of move. Once I get to my movement phase, I'm gonna move up and try to draw line of sight and see how many shots I can get on him." And he's like, whoa, wait a minute. I gave you first turn because I didn't think you had line of sight. And so we start going back and forth. I'm already in my hero phase. I've already moved my ship up. I've already started marking things. I've already laid my warp lightning vortex down. And now he's wanting to like go first.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we're into one. You know, like I've started. I hadn't moved it, but I had pre-measured everything. I'd marked where my ship's going to be and stuff like that. And so I said, okay, I hear your concern. And I said, so I was like, if you want to move your Star Master anywhere else on the board, that's fine. Like you can move your Salon somewhere else. And he's like, well, there's no point in me doing that because you can get him anywhere on the table. And I looked at him and I said, I know, that's the point. Mm-hmm. And so the mistake he made was deploying in the heavens. The mistake he didn't make was about the line of sight.
Yeah,
it's putting so much in the heavens,
so much hanging on that one slan.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now he had the item that on a 4-up he would go back to max wounds.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have to kill him twice. I'd have to run through, so like there's a chance. But like if I were him, what I would have done is I would have only put half of that stuff in the heavens, enough that I still would have incentivized me to come after it. I like to control my deployment because you can force where I'm going to go based on where he is. And he would have had enough survivability if he had been in the actual temple. Because he could have garrisoned the slot in the temple, gotten -1 to shooting, technically -2 to shooting, +1 to save, to negate my all-out assault, and like hopefully move the numbers enough, would have lived twice to be able to push me off, and still deploy everything, still teleport out, but had me in a vulnerable spot that would have forced my hand.
Were those 5 guard or just
those were 5 guard, and so I had to kill out the 5 guard too.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
So I had to kill out the 5 guard. I had to kill him with only what was in the boat because nothing else could draw line of sight to him. That was still true.
Eventually killing him twice.
Yeah, I had to kill him twice, and so we started rolling dice. Right, Basil was really frustrated, but I felt warranted in not going back. Because I had already broadcasted what I was going to do, what my strategy was, where I was deploying my things, and he had asked me, "Do you mind if I go back and just deploy everything on the table?" And I said, "No, that's not what we are multiple steps." So. Yeah, he outdropped me. We are multiple steps past that. He has made multiple decision points past that, and then given me the turn. I've now pre-entered all of my stuff and explained what I'm going to do.
I have a question. With his, what what heroic action did he do?
He did,
Taco Tuesday.
Not whatever it's called. The
CP one.
No. He did he did finest hour on the salon to keep it alive. Like he finest houred, like he all out defense, like he did everything, right?
Yeah. So he did find his hour, even though because that would be the beginning of your hero phase. So he must have had an inkling that you might be able to get line of sight, or else he would have done.
Well, like I said, I'm going to kill your general.
Yeah.
And he's like, how are you going to do that? And I was like, I don't know, but I have to. Like, I don't have a choice. I'm going to get as much. I'm going to try to kill him. And then that's when that conversation. Tactic? Yes. Yeah. And then he chose defense. And he's like, I don't think you can get him. You can't get line of sight. And that's where that conversation started. Yeah. And so then I started laying out sticks and showed measurements. And I said, well, I think I can get line of sight for at least the ship here. And And like I had to keep my Thunderers in the ship. I couldn't deploy my Thunderers on the table because then they didn't have line of sight to him anymore. So like it limited my bonuses to hit and like, but it's what I had to do in order to try to kill him. And so I ended up with my short range gun. I shot off all the guard, and then I all out assaulted on my ironclad, and I overkilled his Slan by like tons of wounds, but that didn't matter because the item stops the attack sequence.
Yeah.
He rolled the 4+, he rolled a 5, so he popped back up at full wounds. And then I had to do all of my Thunder attacks on him without my bonuses. And he ended up dying in my second to last shot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Basil was frustrated. He then went, did a little bit of stuff, did some shooting, doubled me, took my objective, one of my objectives, the one that I left unguarded, and then he burned all 4 of them. So there are only 2 objectives, and then basically conceded.
Yeah.
So, and that was the game. And that was the event. So, and there were some hard feelings from him initially, but we ended up sitting together for the next hour or 2 and just talked and had a beer together and hung out and processed and stuff like that. So it wasn't like we weren't in a bad spot when we left that day.
Yeah.
Okay.
But other people caught wind of what happened and stirred some crap online. And that's why I had to come out with a public post to say, like, to clarify, this is what happened. And I walked through everything. And we did that until the controversy passed. And then him and I both deleted all of our posts because him and I were communicating, messaging one another to like, make sure we were clear on everything. Because we had agreed. It's just a lot of people were dinging me for bad sportsmanship. But the challenge is that like what we did, like, and I looked at him at one point and he was like, can I do this? Can I go back? And I said, we're on table 1, man.
Yeah.
Like at a different point in the event. Yeah. But at like decisions have been made on both of our sides.
Yeah.
Like I've explained my battle tactic, but I've explained what I'm doing and deploying so that there's clarity of what's happening. We can't go back at this point. And so I felt bad, but at the same time, like decisions were made.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, obviously it's unfortunate that the deciding game for both players ends like this. But as you said, it is table 1. You expect players to know what a Zilfin Alpha does, as you know what his list does.
Yeah. Yeah. We both knew it, and he gave me the turn.
But as long as you both then, if the 2 players of you are clear in it and you've talked it out, I think that's all we should say about it. And stop it here.
Yeah. So that's where it ended, and like it's unfortunate, but that's what happened. So Basil's a great player. I would roll dice with him any day of the week. So I ended up taking best overall. The second player, I was the only one to have 5 majors. So technically it says that the player 2 also went 5-0, which was the Bone Splitter players, but he had 1 minor win instead of all 5 majors. And I ended up because I took best painted, and best painted also figures into figures into the point total. I ended up like winning by like 12 points or something like that. So it was a pretty big spread. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. So it was thank you. It was a great event. Nashcon, I love it. I would encourage anybody to go to an event like that. So
I do like the 2 list format because it's a bit similar to a pairing style team event where you can match. Because usually with a single list, either you design a list that can deal with everything but nothing well, and then you run up into your hard counter into some Idoneth. Or you have some more chances to play around, and it also it tickles your creativity, like it makes you build lists.
I think this list, honestly, or I think this format is the most, like, it lets good generals shine. Because the people who have a better mastery of scenarios and all of the armies will perform better. Because like it allows better generals in the list building process to do their thing. It allows better generals to look at all the different permutations of what might match up and choose the right choice and understand how lists will interface with the scenarios. So, like, in my opinion, like, I wish this was the standard format. And it lets people play with more of their toys.
That's a good point.
Makes people paint more toys.
Right.
So there's just one final thing we need to do. We need to see that sword, Tom.
Oh, which one?
Both of them.
So here is the.
Because over here in Europe, you get a little cup.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So this is the best overall sword. So it's a scimitar. It looks like an Arcanaut cutter.
That's awesome. Can we enhance the picture, please?
So
let's see if I can remember how to do this. There we go.
Wow.
There you go. There's the best overall. Cool. And then here is best painted. Now I don't know why David did best painted as the larger of the two. It's a claymore, but. There's best painted.
Oh, it's probably like a Slayer sword thing.
Yes, indeed. And so you can just get it all in frame there. It's funny. I did not anticipate winning this. I've never I took a hobby award with this army. I've ranked really well at Adepticon with this army, but I didn't expect to win. And especially because Vince was one of the main paint judges. Vince knows all of the mistakes that I've made on this army. He knows all of the gaps, right? And even the new units, I was still up painting units the night before.
So Vince goes straight to the model, the one Arcanaut that you've hidden at the
right, like that. He knows where the mistakes
picked it up,
are, right?
Turned it around, like, what's this?
But right, exactly, and he knows my cheats. He knows all that, so he knows where I've cut corners. And so I just, in general, like a lot of the tricks, like bright and flashy colors, don't work on Vince from a paint judging standpoint. And so I just knew that I just had written it off. But it wasn't just Vince. It was also David and also Anthony that were on the paint judging. And when they looked at the field, they unanimously felt that my stuff was more consistent because I have a very very strict process across my army, and so I paint every piece of cloth the exact same way with the exact same number of steps, and so it will there's consistency where a lot of the other top contenders they might have done one thing really nice, but the equivalent thing on another part of the army was not done well at all. Or their basing or their board or whatever just didn't have the diversity that mine did, and so I ended up squeaking it out. And so it's funny when they announced it, I was like, "Excuse me, what?" It truly caught me off guard. So, yep. So I ended up taking home 2 swords. That is not something I expected. So
that's awesome.
It was a great honor.
Very cool. I have one slightly broad question. I know we're pressed for time, so you might not be able to go into detail. Obviously, you took 2 lists to this tournament. Yeah. So obviously, you could lean into skews a little bit more. And that's what the format is good for.
Yep.
Obviously, if you're going to a tournament where you could only take 1 list.
Yeah.
It's a completely different situation. So would you lean towards Zilfin since you use that more?
I know my all-comers list, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
It's very close to what I took here. I have it on my phone, actually. I will read it. I'm going to break it here now. In my opinion, I think that this is the best KO list, all-comers list out there right now.
People, take notes.
Yes.
It's
sharpen your quills.
It's a 1-drop
Mm-hmm.
with it's a Zilfin. It has an ironclad and a frigate. It has 2 units of 10 Thunderers each, with mixed weapons. So there's 10 in the ironclad, 10 in the frigate.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the ironclad, it has an admiral and a chemist. The chemist is your general with the bonus item.
The collector trait, yeah.
Yes.
The collector trait. So you're running the bottle, warp lightning vortex, and you're given, and then you also, the other units you have are 2 units of 10 Arco and an Endormaster with dirigible. And and the Endormaster with dirigible is going to have the +1 to hit Zilfin item. And so you have two units of Arco that can sit on objectives.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have 2 ships that are mobile. Both of them have 10 Thunders in them each with mixed weapons. You have the Zilfin, you have the Warp Lightning Vortex Alpha, and you have 2 heroes in the Ironclad. And then for the frigate, you can send the Endormaster with the frigate. So it has a hero as well. Lee, you obviously, like, we talked about this list. I had posted it in the WhatsApp, and you're the one that I think had mentioned, well, why not do the I think you had suggested you might have I think I originally had 2 units of 20 Arco, and you're the one I think that had suggested, hey, why don't you drop those down to 10 and pick up an Endormaster so that other set can have a hero to give commands to the ship. So
I can't remember
so
if I said that, but I'll take credit for it.
I think you were the one that had commented on me, because I had wanted to do units of 20 Arco, but I also wanted another hero to be able to travel with the frigate, and you were the one where we were like, why don't you just take an Endormaster? And so that's what I did, and I love it. It's a 1-drop. It's a tight list. It does everything that I did in my Zilfin list with now more Thunderers.
Okay.
Like, so like it does all the things. So, and it's 1-drop.
So following the trend, here's my frigate.
Nice. Nice.
Cool. So I guess we can expect you back on the show when you win a tournament with that list then.
We'll see. We'll see.
In about a month or a couple of weeks?
No, so I'm probably gonna jump. I'm gonna probably jump away and play some. Like, KO was not ranked real well. Like they were in like the low 40s on Honest Wargamers, rankings. And I wanted to take them to see what I could do with them. I did well. My plan is, I think I'm going to do Night Haunt next. So the next real big event I'm going to do a teams event with Vince where I'm going to do Settlers Gain at 1,000 points, because I needed something that would pair with him and that I didn't have to paint a lot for, which is what I'm going to do. And then I'm going to take my next real big event. I'm going to take Night Haunt too. So, and see if I can perform with it. So I like jumping armies. And so, but obviously KO is my love. I'm always going to come back to him. So,
we'll allow it.
KO is the wife at home, and the other armies are the mistresses and things. Not that I'm advocating that sort of thing, of course.
Indeed.
Cool. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, Tom.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Love to have you on again at some point. You don't have to win a tournament to come back on. It'd be nice to have you on just to have a chat about this.
I'd love to talk the new book when the new book comes out.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, that's over a year away, so
it might be a while. So I can probably come before that.
You're always welcome.
Thanks. Max, of course, always a pleasure to have you co-hosting.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll talk about the whole AOS Worlds next time. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's AOS 2. It's not relevant.
And everyone in the chat that watched us live, thanks for watching. Sorry we couldn't sort of pick up on questions as much as we normally would, but we're very pressed for time on this show.
Yep. I apologize. It's my fault. So
it's been a hard slog with time zones this week. But if you like the show, please hit like, please subscribe for future KO and AOS content, and we will see you again next time, Skyfares. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.